growth of 3%, you're laughing. 2.5%, you're laughing. That's about right. That's about what the economy's humming along. Chances of getting a job are pretty good. You know, chances of being able to save pretty good. You know,
and where are we?
We're at well, the economists think we're about 1 or a little under 1.
Right.
That's what the economists think as we head into the months of this year. That's what we're looking at. So it's not great.
Yeah, it's not great. Are you feeling confident about financial and economic news? David Taylor's here, ABC reporter with the drum. He dances to the beat of his own drum and sting here. But what about China? Because everybody's looking to China as well, and its economy's not growing that well. We don't really know exactly.
No, it's impossible to tell with the figures.
What's the impact there?
Well, there used to be a saying not long after the global financial crisis that if Chinese economic growth, the annual pace of growth, fell below around about 3%, then Australia risked recession. And that was related to the fact that, you know, a big chunk of Australia's GDP was related to exports of iron ore, and if they would have plummeted suddenly, then the economy would be in big trouble there. A huge driver of the Australian economy from sort of, 1995, well into the late 2000s was iron ore and the mining boom, and all sorts of efforts to capture that with taxes between 2000 and 2010 were largely unsuccessful. So you've got a situation where China has been a massive engine room for the Australian economy. Fast forward to now, it's still extremely important. And you've got big companies like BHP and Rio Tinto that are currently driving the stock market to really close to all-time highs based on a huge run-up in the price of iron ore. That's directly related to China. Obviously, in recent days, there's been questions about the population growth in China and whether the Chinese economy can actually sustain the kind of growth that we need them to sustain with a declining population into the future.
Yes, because now, they have not having, after all that time of one-child families, now they're saying, can you have babies, please? We'll give you some money.
That's right.
And Chinese women are saying no.
That's it. So, and many experts over the years have said, Sarah, look, do we really want to be that reliant on one economy for our economic growth?
But we are.
We are. The bottom line for us now, though, is that the consumer spending, and again, some people might say, dude, what does that mean? Is that me going to the shops and buying Mars bar? Is that me going to the shops and buying a new fridge? Well, yes, basically it is. That's a big part of what drives the Australian economy forward now. It's shifting that way. So around about 60 to 70% of Australian economic growth comes from retail therapy, people going out there and buying and spending at the shops. So that's why the focus on China has shifted ever so slightly in recent months to now what the Reserve Bank is going to do, because the Reserve Bank's influence over interest rates is critical to whether people feel like they want to go out and spend. And in actual fact, across my desk this morning has been a survey from the ANZ Bank, and because I'm live on local radio, I won't be able to find it, but
well, I'll read.
Oh no, I got it.
Someone saying, the same people doing the big spending are not the same ones who are being heard for a few moments, and I'm not sure a new TV is going to be enough to put me over the line. And also the COVID infections there, like that's going to have an impact too, right? They're saying up to 1 billion people could have COVID.
Yes. I'm not. I think that indeed with what we're shipping to China in terms of gas and coal and iron ore, the very makeup of what we're giving them in order to boost the economy will shift over time as the world heads to net zero carbon emissions by 2050. Already we've got big projects situated or planned to be built on the Northern Territory for solar, down Tassie wind. Australia is trying ever so hard to become an exporter of clean, green energy. So will China want that? Will Indonesia want that? Will European countries want that? So,
yes, well, we know they do.
Exactly. So what we look like as a country and what we export and how much that is needed in the next sort of couple of decades is really, really crucial. But I think we're in the process, I hesitate to say this, but I think we're in the process of shifting away from being a one-trick pony iron ore economy, perhaps to being more services and consumer-driven.
And yet that Sun Cable, Andrew Forrest pulled out of the Sun Cable project that was going to provide all this power, solar power to Singapore. So
I think that's an example, though, of what happens when, I'm not going to say when we go too fast, but it's what happens when you have these every good intention to take, radiation from 1,000,000 miles up in the sky, put it down into the Northern Territory, send it off to Darwin, great, send it off to Singapore, and, Cannon Brooks and Twiggy Forrest disagree about it, and they go, well, Forrest is like, I'm not so sure about that, I'm not sure about the numbers add up,
right.
And Cannon Brooks is like, yeah, let's do it,
Yeah.
and it falls over.
Yeah. Well, it's also people, isn't it, involved?
That's it.
Them. Who knows?
Really tricky.
David Taylor, it's 9:45 on ABC Radio Sydney. Sarah McDonald with you, and David Taylor, ABC reporter with The Drum. Please ask David to explain why interest rates need to rise to reduce spending when the cost of living is rising. Our groceries, our power, our tolls, everything else.
Well, this is the thing, and this is what the Reserve Bank has tried to explain, I don't think particularly well, over the last 6 months, but the reality is you've got a situation like a big flood in Victoria, and it pushes up the cost of fruit that's in the food bowl. Now, that's nothing to do with consumer demand. That's to do with a natural disaster and an event that's pushed up the cost of that particular food, and that comes through to the grocery store. The Reserve Bank can't do anything about that. What the I can't believe I'm even saying this, but what the Reserve Bank's theory from the textbooks is, can I hit the desk when I say this? Yeah, let's just hit the economy. Let's just do a broad thumping of the economy, broad spectrum approach, reduce demand, and we know that will reduce prices across the economy. And it's just a little bit blunt.
Yes. Does inflation continue to increase forever, says the texter? So, for instance, it used to be sort of 20 cents to get an ice block. Now it's sort of $2.50. In the future, will the average wage be $1 million a week? It's not sure. It's an interesting thought, isn't it?
I hope so. I mean, the bottom line is that the economy, think about the economy as essentially, again, I can't believe I'm saying this, a living organism, because economies, by nature, grow. But you want to hope that both the income and the expenses side grow together. Perhaps the income grows a little bit more than the expenses, but basically our wages should be growing enough that it really isn't that much of a problem. Pandemics come and go. Wars come and go if you look over history. So I think the problem we're having now is that we're coming up against a very unusual situation in terms of what's driving inflation, but also the fact that wages generationally are doing so poorly, and that's what's hurting us so much.
It's all relative, isn't it? Right. That's about how much that ice block is compared to your wage. David Taylor, ABC reporter with The Drum. Thank you. You make it all much clearer for us. And you know what? I have overpromised and undelivered on the show, but it's not my fault. It's TV's fault, because television interview with Jemima Khan has run late, so we don't have time. So you're my glamorous guest today, not Jemima Khan.
Fair enough.
Looking good.
Fair enough.
Thank you.
Fair enough.
Do you like Neil Diamond?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. 82. I guess that. The producer asked me what his age was, and I guess 82, and I got it right.
Spot on. Well, did you see that amazing show? He was at a theatre show, and he was on the balcony, sort of in the little balcony seats, and he started singing Sweet Caroline with the crowd. Have you seen it? Look it up on YouTube. Oh, it's just absolutely beautiful piece of footage, because he has got Parkinson's and he's not performing anymore. And it's a gorgeous piece of theatre and love from the theatre. They're singing back to him. They're singing this song, Sweet Caroline. 10 number one singles this to the Thunder Zone. Thanks, David.
Thank you.
Here's Sweet Caroline. Did you Caroline? Sing it loud.
Veteran war crimes prosecutor Reid Brodie speaking with our reporter Bonnie Simons-Brown. Staying overseas for a moment, an interesting story when it comes to UK politics. The British Prime Minister Rishi Sunak has ordered his ethics advisor to investigate the tax affairs of a senior member of his party, Nadim Zahawi, saying there are questions that need answering. And when I say senior, Mr Zahawi is chairman of the governing Conservative Party. He's facing calls to resign after it emerged that he paid a penalty to tax authorities, and it was all to settle a multi-million-dollar dispute for previously unpaid tax. Rishi Sunak said he had Mr Zahawi's full compliance when he ordered the inquiry.
Integrity and accountability is really important to me, and clearly in this case there are questions that need answering, and that's why I've asked our independent advisor to get to the bottom of everything, to investigate the matter fully and establish all the facts and provide advice to me on Nadeem Zahawi's compliance.
Correspondent Rob Watson. The story of the two chairmen, So let's take the first one first. Essentially, the ethics advisor will be asked to look into his tax affairs and whether that involves any breach of the ministerial code. What that means is if you're going to be a minister in this country, you've got to make sure that you're above the law, you haven't been doing anything that was unlawful, and that there were no kind of conflicts between your kind of private life and your public duties, which, given that he was head of the whole finance department, you could see why that's relevant. And it's worth reminding ourselves, we still don't really know the basics of what's gone on here with Mr Zahawi's tax affairs. So the investigation will look into that. Why did he pay a penalty? Why were his taxes unpaid? And basically, what on earth happened?
So that's one investigation to Nadeem Zahawi, and there's also now some kind of investigation going on into the relationship between the former Prime Minister Boris Johnson and the current chairman of the BBC, Richard Sharp.
Yes, and the chairman of the BBC, Richard Sharp, is the one calling for that. I mean, he's issued a statement saying, look, all I did was to introduce someone who wanted to help Boris Johnson with those financial difficulties to a senior civil servant, a senior official. I didn't have any involvement in the loan, but hey, just as everybody is sort of comfortable, let's look into this. And he says in this statement, look, I don't make any secret of my friendship with Boris Johnson, but I think what he's trying to answer is that somehow there was a link between any help he may have given Mr Johnson, their friendship, and him getting his job as chairman of the BBC.
And this all comes at a time when the government's already under pressure on a number of different fronts.
Yes, I mean, I think it's really difficult for the government, and it's really difficult for the BBC. I mean, to take the BBC first, I mean, whatever Mr Sharp's explanation, I mean, I think the problem is an awful lot of ordinary people are going to be thinking, hang on a minute, so the bloke who's supposed to be in charge of the BBC's independence, he was appointed by someone who was a mate, and there's some suggestion that he at least sort of vaguely helped him with financial things. So that's the BBC's problem. The government's problem is that this will look to a lot of people